What would be the best possible starter to use from any game to beat Pokemon Red and Blue? See, Bulbasaur is originally the best pick, but let's take a peek at 5 even better options, starting with Infernape. Debatably the most dominant starter of any generation, let's start by saying Professor Oak grabbed the wrong Pokeball on that fateful day and accidentally gave you a Chimchar. Well, starting out, that Chimchar doesn't fare too well, losing against Brock's fire-resistant rock types since it only knows Ember. And like Charmander, it's gonna get wrecked by Misty's water types. Still, it at least easily wins against Erica's grass Pokemon, and since you can get the ground type Dig TM in Celadon City, Chimchar destroys Lieutenant Surge's electrics, Koga's poisons, and Blaine's fire types. So yeah, it gets wrecked by Sabrina's OP psychic types, but it actually does pretty well against Giovanni since it outspeeds and has the super effective dig against Rhyhorn, Nidoqueen, Nidoking, and Rhydon. Getting into the Elite Four, Infernape struggles against Lorelei's water types because of its lack of good fighting type moves in Gen 1. It can use fire to do decent damage, but it is going to get taken down pretty quick to water moves. It does manage to pick itself up in a big way with Stab Flamethrower against Bruno's fighting and Agatha's poison types. Despite not being able to solo everything here, you can definitely lay out some big damage on at least a few Pokemon on both teams. And you would think it gets crushed by Lance, who resists fire entirely, but it actually does really well here. And that's because the AI in this game is really weird. The AI will see Dragonair and Dragonite's agility being psychic and therefore super effective against Infernape's fighting type. Because of this, it will just spam these moves over and over despite dealing no damage. It's actually a huge advantage against this fight and would allow Infernape to take out 3 of his Pokemon. And firefighting fares pretty poorly against your rival's Blastoise-led team, really only being able to take on Exeggutor and Rhydon. Even with its lackluster Elite Four performance, it does pretty solid in Gen 1. Considerably better than Charizard and debatably better than Venusaur. But is there another Pokemon that could do better? Well, Psychic types are the most dominant type in Generation 1 because they don't really have any weaknesses. And even though Gen 1 doesn't have Steel Dark typings, it did have Ghost. So how would Alola's Ghost Grass Owl Decidueye fare in Red and Blue? Well, it gets off to a great start, easily beating Brock and destroying Misty with that beautiful auto-crit Razor Leaf. Unfortunately, Dartrix is only neutral against Lieutenant Surge due to its flying typing, but this immediately becomes a benefit, crushing Erica with Stab Peck. Koga is Decidueye's first real roadblock with his super effective poison moves, but if you evolve up to Decidueye, then poison at least becomes neutral against it. But don't worry, because after that, Decidueye's super effective ghost typing absolutely crushes Sabrina, the hardest gym leader in the game. At least it would, if it actually had a ghost type move in Gen 1. See, the only damage dealing ghost type move in this generation was the measly 20 damage Lick, and obviously Decidueye wouldn't get that. But what makes this even more messed up is even if it could learn its signature crazy move Spirit Shackle, for some reason, in Gen 1 only, Psychic type Pokemon have Ghost immunity due to a coding error. So in the state the game was in, it would really just be better off using Stab Auto Crit Razor Leaf. So yeah, probably gonna lose to Sabrina, then you get wrecked by Blaine, but it can at least comfortably take out Giovanni. Now as for the Elite Four, it does well against Lorelei's Water Ice Pokemon. It's immune to Bruno's fighting types and destroys his Onix, but it goes downhill after this. Decidueye would struggle heavily against Agatha's Poison composed team and Lance's Flyers. And unfortunately, it also really can't do much against your rival's Charizard-led team. So overall, Decidueye should do amazing, but Gen 1's lack of Ghost-type moves and Psychic's weird bugs, it just doesn't perform as well as it should. Still though, better than Venusaur. So maybe, as expected, it turns out nothing can stop the Psychic type in Gen 1. And so if we can't beat them, why not join them and try out the one Psychic type starter, Delphox? Well, Braixen doesn't learn Psybeam until level 18, so in the early game, Fennekin gets crushed by Brock and Misty, really only knowing Ember. Fire Psychic will then go on to destroy Erica and Koga, and is better than average against Sabrina due to Psychic resistance, since you do have Fire Stab moves. It also gets resistance against Blaine, and surprisingly can stomp Giovanni's weak defense Poison types as long as you watch out for his Stab Dig Dug trio. As for the Elite Four, with Stab Flamethrower, it can take out Lorelei's Jinx, attacks, Bruno's fighting types, and Agatha is a clean sweep. Even Lance can't stand up to the Psychic besides for Gyarados' Hydro Pump, and on the Rivals team, it's really up to Blastoise to stop it. So overall, Delphox becomes a force to be reckoned with and is insane against the Elite Four. And it would be on the top spot on this list if sadly it wasn't so bad in the early game. And so unsurprisingly, it turns out that a good early game Pokemon is the best for this generation. And as a kid who loved his Earthquake spam, it also doesn't surprise me that the best two Pokemon for beating these games are both ground type. It's gonna come down to Torterra of Gen 4 and Swampert of Gen 3. But the question is, which one is better? Well, Torterra gets off to a phenomenal start, beating Brock and Misty easily with Stab, Auto Crit, Razor Leaf. It also destroys Surge with Electric Immunity and resists Erica's team while going neutral to 2 out of her 3 Pokemon. As for Koga, it's a clean sweep. And as for Sabrina, Stab Earthquake is more than enough to destroy through her pitiful defenses. As long as it can take a hit from Alakazam, you win that fight. Blaine is also a surprisingly doable fight. Growlithe, Ponyta, and Rapidash all have weak fire-type moves, so you can easily Earthquake them. The only thing you have to watch out for is Arcanine with Fire Blast. And you even destroy the ground-type Giovanni. So in total, Torterra basically destroys 7 of the 8 Kanto gyms. It's clearly cracked up against this point, but how does it do against the Elite Four? Well, it's strong against Agatha's Poison-led team, and even at that, loses to her Golbat. Lorelei's team easily wins with its 4-time ice moves, it's neutral to Bruno besides Hitmonchan knowing Ice Punch, and gets wrecked by Dragonite's Grass Resistance and Ground Immunity. As for the rival team, it can really only deal with Rhydon and Alakazam before getting absolutely mauled by Charizard and Pidgeot. So had Torterra been able to keep up the momentum from the gym leaders against the Elite Four, it definitely could have taken the top spot. But how about Swampert? Can it fare any better late game? Well, it's very similar to Torterra against the gyms, but since it's a water type, it gets access to ice moves, and well, you see where I'm going with this? It destroys Brock with Water Gun, resists Misty, crushes Surge with Electric Immunity, and the TM Dig. At this point in the game, it can get Ice Beam from the Celadon department store to take on Erica's grass types. But with a 4x weakness and Pokemon that have Auto Crit Razor Leaf, you're getting absolutely washed here. But now able to get Stab Earthquake via TM from the Sylph Company, Swampert crushes Koga, overpowers Sabrina, and easily wrecks Blaine's fire types. And finally, it runs through Giovanni with a combination of Surf and Earthquake. So just like Torterra, Swampert is absolutely cracked against the gyms of Kanto and can pretty much take down basically every team. As for the Elite Four, however, this is where it continues to dominate. It's neutral to Lorelei's Water and Ice team, beats Bruno's Onix and Stab Earthquakes the rest, destroys Agatha with Poison Resistance and super effective Earthquake against her whole team aside from Golbat, which goes down by Ice Beam. It also then goes on to wreck Lance with Ice Beam besides the neutral Gyarados. So yeah, pretty good against the Elite Four, and in the rival fight, it fares just as well. You can take out Pidgeot with Ice Beam, Earthquake Alakazam, Surf Rhydon and Arcanine, and Gyarados is a stalemate, but Ice Beam can deal solid damage. All that's left in your way is Venusaur, and if you're high enough level, you can outspeed it and get an Ice Beam or 2 off. Furthermore, if you're lucky, the faulty AI might even use Growth or Solar Beam and let you take it out entirely, sweeping his team with a single Pokemon. But not just any Pokemon, we're talking Swampert, what would undeniably be the best starter Pokemon for Red and Blue.